Welcome back, everybody. Today we're discussing the season finale of Loki.
Ages and ages of cosmic harmony, hence...
You're welcome.
Hey, the multiverse is alive, the power vacuum was created, and all of the wonderful chaos that will be upon our screens in due time is gonna be here in due time. The finale finished the first season with a bang, and the face-off between the Lokis and He Who Remains was every bit the philosophical battle that we discussed it being 2 or 3 videos ago. With a truly terrifying implication, we are now set for the multiverse of madness and every version of Kang that will exist beyond that. The very first thing that stood out to me was Jonathan Majors. Of course, the big reveal of this episode was He Who Remains being the big kind of bad behind all of this, but Jonathan Majors, in basically every single role that I have seen him in, is so much more serious than he was in this episode. Seeing him so jolly and playful felt incredibly jarring in the best ways. It was meant to make you feel uncomfortable as this unbelievably powerful being controlled all of the strings of the universe, and he didn't need to be mean or powerful, he just was. It was great acting, and the reveal, amazing. It looks like they are combining characters once again, like they love to do from the comics, and in this time they are combining He Who Remains and Kang the Conqueror into one being, while also acknowledging them as different, as variations of each other. The even more complex reveal is something that we also spoke about before, where whomever was in charge were doing what they were doing to remain in charge, thinking that they were better than the evil that they were afraid of, preventing the others from taking the mantle. I was pumped to see this reveal, even if it wasn't a Loki like I thought it may have been last video. Still a great reveal. The way they deployed this entire thing, I love it. This incredible concept also leads to the cyclical timeline theory, with a ton of reinforcement where they showed the timeline as a circle multiple times, and all of the hints about He Who Remains, telling us that he is born in the 31st century, a time which has not occurred in this reality yet, and the marks about his reincarnation before death. In the comics, He Who Remains creates the time twisters that are meant to teach the next reality when everything goes kabloomy. Though the idea quickly falls apart, and Thor and Jane Foster are needed to save the day, which might actually come into play here. I think the implications of this are massive, and the reason it wasn't explicitly revealed that the timeline was cyclical or that we could be heading towards that big pinnacle restart moment is because that is a story for another time, and I still think the clues are here, though again, it may be used for a bigger reveal down the road. The episode begins with the classic Marvel opening with voiceovers now from the previous movies and some quotes from people in the real life that I guess mean now they are canon in the MCU. It's meant to remind us of the sacred timeline that has been created, the one that works, and the one that all of our heroes exist and avenge on. I loved this opening, and the transitioning from that to this realm is just, oh my goodness, top tier. We learned that this is the Citadel at the end of time, and then this happens. I don't know about anybody else, I jumped so hard here. Like, well done, super funny, unexpected, great bathos during this tense moment that really sets the scene for the big bad to not be, this super big evil villain, but a playful man that we soon meet. Miss Minutes tries to bargain with them, and it does not work, and we finally get to meet the man behind the curtain. He Who Remains. It's important to keep in mind this is not Kang the Conqueror, just as Sylvie and Loki should be considered individuals that are able to kiss each other without it making, everybody cringe or it being weird. This is He Who Remains, a variation of a person that could be a countless number of people. The majority of this episode was a conversation, and it was still a magical finale due to the acting and writing as they discuss a plethora of things, starting with his powers. He knows everything. While the details of that aren't exactly noted, as it is explained, he knew everything that would happen to a finite point in time. We find out that the timekeepers are a myth to make it sound more pleasant. The reality is that he was once a part of this great multiversal war against ultimately himself, and he was the one who weaponized Elliott to take the throne and end the others. He destroyed the other timelines and then started the TVA to maintain that control for an unknown amount of time, continually murdering realities under the guise that the other versions of himself were far worse. How? He was actively trying to maintain peace by feeding other realities to his pet. I'm not really sure what Kang the Conqueror is going to do that would be worse. No timelines? I don't know. Let's talk about that in the theory section. While the plot at the Citadel takes place, He Who Remains instructs Miss Minutes to give Ravonna some files that she did not request and ultimately that don't get revealed to us. More theories on that later as well. Mobius takes over the TVA by exposing the Hunters to the sacred timeline version of Judge Renslayer, and ultimately it works. Well, sort of. The TVA is now awake, and Mobius gets his butt kicked by his old friend before she disappears into the ether. Hunter B-15 and Mobius watch as the timeline goes crazy, created by the actions at the Citadel. He Who Remains gives the gambit that we spoke about all the way back in episode 3, the power vacuum that would be created, and I am oh so happy that the betrayal that happened between these two was over this moral dilemma. It was glorious in my opinion, and finally when they lock lips and we think they might have found some middle ground or found a way out of this impossible choice, we're reminded that these are two broken people, and she only ever had one choice that she could have made. Loki, defeated once again, limps back to explain what happened to Mobius, only to find that his friend does not know who he is, and Kang the Conqueror was already in control of the TVA. After all, they did tell us that time works differently around here. Sylvie stabs He Who Remains, and the sacred timeline branches, filling the skies with chaos that ultimately becomes a beautiful light bouncing in every direction, which is a perfect analogy for why she made the right choice. Free will now exists, and for more than one person. Certainly, because of her actions, there will be chaos, there will be suffering, but because of this, now everybody, and not just a single tailored reality, can live as they please and choose to live. I said this before, but the multiverse is the most natural state that this thing wants to exist as. That is why variations occur. It's trying to break back to that state that is unaffected by mankind, and now it does. And we will get to see all of the beauty that comes from this choice, just as we will see all of the pain.
No turning back now.
Who said anything about turning back?
Now, my favorite part of every video, theories. So, the first thing I want to say, damn, I cannot believe it wasn't another Loki behind all of this. It really felt like it could have been, but this variation of Kang honestly makes so much sense. They combined He Who Remains and Immortus, or Nathaniel Richards, into the same character, which brings me to my first theory. I think Ravonna might have gone off to become what I mentioned a couple videos ago. A time twister. She might get a better name, but in the comics, He Who Remains creates the time twisters with the intent of teaching the next universe. This plan fails terribly, but during the last episode, we see her sent off with this information that we still don't know, to a time that we still don't know, that was provided by He Who Remains. If you really think about it, this feels like it could be a failsafe of his. Like, He Who Remains, because he watched Sylvie her entire life, knew that she could only ever do one thing, and that would be to kill him. This moment would have to happen. So he created a backup plan. I think whatever Ravonna is doing will be to try and repair what just happened at the TVA. I think this will make a very compelling character, as she was once the antagonist to our heroes here, and might have them once again on the same side, trying to fix what they just created. This also relates to my next theory directly, and how I think Kang the Conqueror gets to be the one in charge of the TVA. Time is funny. From the point of view of Sylvie, beyond this fixed point in space-time, any number of years could have elapsed. I think cinematically, they might have Kang the Conqueror appear rather quickly from her perspective, because again, time works differently. That would also explain why Loki teleporting back is already met with his statue. From his perspective, he has done all that he needs to do to be in charge, but we are seeing it as a brief hiccup in time. This also makes me think heavily of how they showed us going into the quantum realm works as well. I will say, time travel stories like this are incredibly paradoxical, and because of the rules in the MCU that have already been established, any number of things could have happened. I'm really not ruling anything out. It's the wild, wild west of time travel right now. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is Kang the Conqueror himself, the variant of this man that would somehow go on to destroy all of sentient life and do something far worse than what is already being done. Well, What could that be? Right now, the system murders countless other realities, and it was delivered in just such a happy-go-lucky way. But technically, this man conquered the other realities once before by weaponizing Elliott. He is basically already Kang the Conqueror. Who's to say the next person isn't going to achieve this throne by taking over Elliott? So the biggest thing that I keep pondering is, what's worse? What is he going to do that's worse? What is, murdering all but one timeline beat by? Murdering all timelines? It's just, he's going for the straight flush, planning to live on the Citadel at the end of time, doing nothing with nobody for all of eternity? Is that a plan? I don't know. Surely not, right? So what could it be? Well, what if it is the cyclical timeline theory? What if he is planning on restarting everything with himself at the helm, creating life in his own image, with his philosophy and moral guidance as their deity? All realities belong to him, or he could simply have one once again with nobody the wiser. A little side note here, but from what He Who Remains told us, I think it's possible that he was the version of himself that came from the sacred timeline. After all, as he described, all of these versions of himself fought each other for exactly that reason, to protect their own reality and timeline. These aren't exactly evil beings, just honest geniuses that knew their own flaws and knew the only way to prevent the other versions of you from murdering you is to murder them. So they did. That's exactly what they did. I really hope there is some developmental point of his life in the 31st century that helped shape his moral understanding of the world. It could be like a cool point in child development that reminds parents to be good parents, like how the first 15 months of a child's life, you are their scope into the world. So when their needs aren't met, it teaches them that the world is a cruel place that allows them to go without, or again, some other interesting developmental thing like that. This could be even what the time twisters go after. Perhaps they would go back and just be a good parent and change whatever this moment was that creates this philosophy of being that shaped this part of him that believes that it is okay to murder others for the greater good. It doesn't change the present, but again, it would create a branch reality, and that young Kang the Conqueror could grow up to be better than the others, finding another way to maintain peace between realities without needing to conquer or murder them. I think that might be the coolest possible twist about where Ravonna could be trying to go. Seeing as she was a literal principal that dealt with children, her role could have even been picked a long time ago, considering all of the foresight that this current He Who Remains actually had. I think if that happens, that would be such a grand, well thought out plot, and I would just, chef's kiss all the way. Regardless of if that happens or not, wherever Ravonna is going, I think she needs to team up with Loki. Whether that is actually them becoming that MCU amalgamation of the Time Twisters or not, I think their interests align more than any others based on how this episode ends, and we just need Ravonna to realize that.
Eons of friendship. And you threw it all away on a couple of Lokis.
Here we go. As much as I loved the scene with Jonathan Majors, all of the scenes with Jonathan Majors, I felt that the lighting and the camera work were severely lacking. I felt like most of the time I could not see his freaking face. I watched it on 3 different screens, one literally bought for the clearest fucking picture money can buy, and compared to Loki and Sylvie, it felt like they just weren't adjusting for his dark skin on camera. His character was manic, like borderline unhinged at times, and having a closer look at his face when he was detailing the more sinister parts of his master free will suppression plan would have added so much more tension and just flavor to this already incredible acting performance. Nearly every shot of this dude was from across the desk. Like, I just wanted to see an award-winning actor act. Bring us closer, make it more intimate, give us some tilted angle when he casually admits to lying about his abilities right in front of everybody's face. Let us see this beautiful man up close. Why the entire time did I feel like he was so far away from the camera? One note in favor that might directly contradict what I'm saying because, I'm a troubleshooter, right? I'm an analyst. In favor of the camera work, so that I'm not just smack talking this single team, they do make him look small in most of the scenes behind the desk, which I think is purposefully done because he's through. This issue is now bigger than him, and the circular, cyclical window behind him dwarfs a once great man. And I think that symbolizes the timeline going in cycles, and I think it is just a beast that is looming behind him, impossible to stop because of the two in front of him. Which, again, I think cinematically, I think it makes it look like a beautiful shot. Again, still wish I saw his face more. I wish it was lit up more. I don't fucking know. Another big pain point for me was the clear lack of description about He Who Remain's powers. I feel like the implication was that he was a man, he was a great scientist, and he used technology and maybe some algorithmic determinism machine, like we talked about, to foresee up until a certain point. But again, it wasn't really fleshed out. The reason that I think a technology is behind his powers and not, again, just his ability by some magic or all-powerful way is that the future was printed out. This feels very machine-based and not like, again, a magic foreseer. I think it fits his character best, but ultimately, I'm sad that this wasn't expanded upon. This is part of the reason that I thought the big bad wasn't going to be him last episode, because he wasn't revealed in the penultimate episode. The reveal was great, but still lacking in places because 3/4 of an episode is not enough to establish a big bad and his abilities. Again, I think that's why we had so much, or I thought that was why we had so much detailing about how Loki's powers actually worked. Even if he was, just the expositional variant for the real big bad to be revealed later on, I don't know. I hate when big bads get revealed and most of the information about them just can only be inferred through these discussions. Give me those juicy details. I want the hard sci-fi rules in my life.
Everything okay?
Yeah, just need a moment.
Now we come to the best parts. This. Oh, and every scene, again, Jonathan Majors was in. I have already said this. He killed the role. Seeing him play a less serious role before he then becomes, Kang the Conqueror and plays a much more evil role. I am so happy about that choice. The Citadel at the end of time was beautiful, and the emotional plea by Loki at the very end, A+. Also, they finally locked lips. Let's fucking go, dude. Of all the people I've ever shipped, I'm so glad this worked. Overall, there was far more good than there was bad. And even though this section of the video is, going to be probably the shortest, I rate this episode and this entire series very highly out of all of the MCU shows, as well as all of the MCU movies. I loved what they did here, and I am excited for season 2. Loki was a testament to sci-fi stories in the modern age, and I think it honestly should get far more credit than it is currently. People love it. It is being talked about, but only in a few of the very nerdy circles that I'm in. I truly look forward to seeing Ravonna, Mobius, Loki, Sylvie as members of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, hopefully, and maybe more than all of those, I'm very excited to see Jonathan Majors in whatever form and whatever variation they display before us. Kang the Conqueror is a character that we've talked about a couple times, and early on we guessed that the Timekeepers were trying to prevent him from taking over, so that feels really good. Now that he is officially being proposed as the next Thanos-level event, I am pumped. The cyclical timeline theory is still on the table, and again, they're using this to expand upon these greater stories. This concept will, in my opinion, be used for the larger story arcs to come about, instead of just fighting for the multiverse or fighting for your single reality, you're fighting for everybody's because, ultimately, if he decides to, Kang could just simply restart everything and the timeline start again with him at the helm. It is, of course, just a theory. But with that, we come to the end of the video. Much love, everybody. Thank you all for being here for the wildest theories that I think I've ever put out into YouTube. I loved Loki for that reason. Like the realm in which we could theory craft upon. Oh my God. I love so much of it. Trans Loki, of course, didn't come true, but many more did. And more than anything, the conversation was most important. Always most important. We got to add just a little bit more to the immersion of the Marvel fandom, and that always feels good. Thank you to everyone that was a part of the conversation on here and on Patreon. or as Twitter as well. Special thank you to this month's highest tier donor, Michael Linck. As always, you, sir, are the best, and I appreciate you very much for always supporting me. Much love, everybody. Please let me know in the comments below what you would like to theorycraft about next, and I will be here for that. Until next time, I cannot wait to talk to you all again soon.